Hey everybody, welcome to Monsters Lounge. I'm Jeni.
I'm Tressa.
Hi Tressa.
Hi.
Hey, we had a great weekend.
We had the best weekend.
The best. What did we do this weekend?
I don't remember.
That's too bad because neither do I.
All right, let's move on.
Fair enough. Oh man. We were at Parapsychon this weekend.
Oh, is that true?
Yes. Yeah. Do you not remember? Like, really?
I just said
Do you
I
not
don't remember.
Oh.
I don't know what you didn't get there.
That's unfortunate. Well, I do remember, and we went
Did
to
we
the...
have fun?
We did have a good time, and we met some people who listened to the show, and that was really nice. And we gave
Yes.
away like 5 whole stickers, which
Oh
was
my
extra
God.
really nice. Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
great.
I mean, they didn't want them, but we gave them out
Yeah,
anyway.
force them to take them.
It was,
Hey,
yeah.
sir in the hallway who recognized us, we didn't get your name, and I apologize. We were overwhelmed with love from you. Thank you.
We really were. Thank you. It was so great.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed the stickers that I forced into your hand.
And put on your back with a sign that said "Kick me." I hope you didn't get too many kicks.
That was my fault. I don't know what to do.
I know
in
you're
public
weird.
sometimes. I know.
Not like me.
No, you're totally fine and normal. There's nothing strange that you ever do.
No. Mm-mm.
Ever.
Nope.
Listen, we should talk about what we have going on in the show tonight.
Oh, tonight. Okay.
Yeah,
What's
tonight.
going on, Jeni?
Listen, we have a cryptid that we're interviewing a cryptid is what's
Oh
happening.
my God! Are you serious?
Yes, we got one. I
That's
got it here
huge.
with Kit Kats and Cheez-Its. No, the gentleman that we are discussing things with tonight has a cryptid that I'm freaking thrilled about. I'm so excited about this thing because the origin story is amazing. And I can't wait to hear more about it. But we are talking to James Szubski, and we're very, very excited about this. I just totally stumbled over my own words. You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Can we start over?
Nope.
Oh,
You are welcome.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we're going to be talking about the Columbia River Gorge. It's a river canyon about 80 miles long and up to 4,000 feet deep that sits between Oregon and Washington states, I believe. He's going to have a lot more information about it than I am. And the photos that I've seen are absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of paranormal stuff that happens there, which is amazing.
Good for us.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And our guest, James Szubski. See how I actually managed to get it out that time?
Good job.
He is the chief operating officer of Margie's Outdoor Store, located in the Columbia River Gorge in Washington State. In 2022, his store initiated a paranormal reporting program, which has now received well over 300 reports of strange activity in the gorge area.
How wild is that?
I know. And I'm really excited about this part because I love people who like go out and work in the outdoors and in the wilderness.
Oh, you do? I didn't know that about you.
I know. It's weird, right?
Yeah.
I know. He is a former volunteer search and rescue EMT, which is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
A wildland firefighter, a mountain guide, and a highly decorated U.S. Army infantry veteran. It's totally fine and respectful. He earned a degree in communication from the Evergreen State College and has enjoyed a decades-long career in that field, working for companies like Wizards of the Coast, the makers of Dungeons and Dragons, and Magic the Gathering, which is wild.
Yeah.
I know. Going from that to an outdoor store, and that makes me so happy. He currently volunteers his time as the leader of the Klickitat Ape Cat research team. Please help me welcome James.
Yay.
Yay!
Thanks for having me on. That was an awesome introduction. Thank you.
Welcome.
Was it?
She does her best.
That
I
name,
try.
it's got for the audience that don't know, my name is spelled Szubski, and when you look at it, it is just a mental roadblock. Like it's impossible.
Yes. It is. I
But
went
that's a
over
practice.
it.
And so you did an admirable job. There's only
Thank
one
you.
person My third grade teacher got it right. Everyone else blew it right out of the gate.
Were
Oh
you
no.
related to her? Is that how she did it?
He actually knew my grandfather,
Okay,
and
see,
but
He had
other than
practice.
that, but I will tell you the worst that I ever heard. It was during a graduation ceremony, and the master of ceremonies just panicked, and they got to my name, and they said James Szubski. Like, where did the L come from? I have no
they're
idea.
just adding stuff.
Yeah, it's like a panic, and it's like, yep, that's me. Thanks.
I kind of really like the name though. Susan Laboose.
Sounds like a super fun cryptid, actually.
It really does. Yeah. Okay, so James, you're going to tell us a little bit about why the Columbia River Gorge is so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to go super nerdy and start talking about all the geological features quite yet because I do love me a geological feature.
You do.
I do. So
Sure.
please.
So the Columbia River Gorge, as you mentioned, is uh, it's a stunningly beautiful natural area. As you mentioned, it's the largest river that empties into the Pacific Ocean in North and South America, and it is located on the border of Washington State and Oregon State. Um, you can basically the river's at sea level, and you can go to 3,000 feet in less than half a mile, and because it runs right through the Cascade Mountains, the whole western half of the gorge is a Pacific Northwest rainforest, moody and brooding and full of secrets. But the eastern half is in a rain shadow, so it is this austere and beautiful and spiritual desert area. And so we have everything from 600-foot waterfalls to desert mesas. I think there's over 500 caves in the area, and it is one of the most rugged wilderness areas you could ever find. The Cascade Mountains themselves are massive in area. Um, they are roughly equivalent to 10 United States combined in land mass. So we're talking about a truly deep, rugged wilderness that tons of things can hide. No one could ever find them.
I'm
And
sorry, James, real quick. Wait, say something.
what do you want me to say?
There
Yeah,
you go.
he's
Your
on
your
back.
mic was getting
Oh,
weird. Like I
was it
couldn't hear you for a
warbling out?
second.
Is that a little
Yeah.
better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move the mic closer there. So, anyway, one of the for a lot of interesting geological reasons that we're not going to get into right now. Um, it is one of the most electromagnetically nuanced and unique areas in the country. And I think that has a significant reason why we see we way over index on reports. And so, as you mentioned, my store has this paranormal reporting program. So, my wife and I were living in Seattle, and my mother in law had a number of businesses down here in the Columbia River Gorge in a tiny little town called Bingen. And she passed away, and we made the decision to carry on the family businesses. And one of those was it was a store that was struggling. And with all my outdoor adventure experience, we converted it into an outdoor adventure store. And in the logo, I included a picture of Sasquatch. And right away, people started coming in and telling us amazing stories. We were hearing stories about UFOs and Bigfoot and ghosts. And I thought, this is fascinating. And because of some of my experiences in the military and in search and rescue and things like that, I know that oftentimes there's a kernel of truth to a lot of these stories. And I've had some unusual experiences myself. And so I gave my staff very special instructions. I said, we are going to treat everyone who comes in, regardless of how wild their story sounds. We're going to treat them with dignity and respect. We're going to ask them intelligent follow-up questions. We're not going to impose what we believe they experienced onto their story. And we're just going to take in the data and see what happens. And honestly, I didn't know where this was going to lead to or what would happen with it. But I was just excited that people were coming in and telling us these astonishing things, right?
Yeah.
And now, a little over 2.5 years later, we have, we've got a board in the store. I think the count is 335 reports. Some days we'll get 10 reports,
Oh,
in one
that's
day.
wild.
a lot of times that comes from a single person has multiple experiences, and so each different experience will count as a unique report.
That's still wild. That's a
Yeah,
lot of reports.
Here's how
and
many reports I get. Zero.
Yeah.
I don't get reports at
Daily,
work.
none.
So,
Yeah.
and but we have stories of missing persons and ghostly apparitions. And Washington State is the per capita number one for Bigfoot sightings, and the gorge within Washington State is the white hot center of all that. And then UFOs were also number one per capita for UFO reports in the country. And so Washington State was already sort of at the top of the pedigree for paranormal stuff. And the gorge, even back in the 1968, the county, so there are two counties on the Washington side. My stores are in Klickitat County, and but my home is in Skamania County. And Skamania County in 1968 was the first governmental body to put legislation on the books that protects Bigfoot. And so basically, if you kill a Bigfoot in Skamania County and it's determined that it is a humanoid, you'll be charged with manslaughter. And
as you should be.
yeah, exactly. So we kind of landed, for me, in this place where, there are glacier-clad stratovolcanoes, within 35 miles of the store. There's Mount Hood, Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens. Of course, Mount St. Helens erupted in the 1980s. And Mount Adams is a huge UFO hotspot. Mount Hood is a Bigfoot hotspot. We've got cliffs, there's whitewater rafting and paragliding and windsurfing, and it is an adventurous paradise. And so when I got down here, for a guy like me, this, I landed in heaven. And then to find out that this place is crawling with amazing, non-scientifically documented creatures and phenomenon, it was just, oh my God, it was the coolest thing I could possibly imagine. So we have built a reputation as a safe place for ordinary people to tell extraordinary stories. And the gorge is not super populated. There's maybe 80,000 people that live here in total, in close to probably 6,000 square miles of rangeland. And I'm pretty well known in the area. And so people will come up to me in restaurants or in the grocery store, at the post office, or even when I'm walking down the street and they say, James, I've got a rig 4x4 that's sort of built for going on investigations in the rugged outback. And they'll see my rig, or they'll recognize my face, and they'll say, James, I have to tell you about this experience I had. So for me, this has just been a joyful, wondrous voyage of discovery. And anyway, we talked about all these different things that that people have reported, but the one that has really captivated my attention is a creature we call the Klickitat Ape Cat. And
Same. Oh my goodness. Like, I'm so excited about this because this has like a couple of really cool origin stories, and I'm all about the electromagnetic like vibe that's going on in a lot of these like national parks and areas and all of those things and the rocks and whatnot.
Let's talk about the giant black cat that's creeping around.
Tell us about that.
Hello.
So we have had well over 100 reports of an enormous and very mysterious Black Panther-like creature. And we have had, the reports go back to the 1960s. We have had reports of it with young, so we believe it's a reproducing population that we're talking about. And so all the stories describe a very muscular, very large, cat-like creature. It has black fur and a long black tail. So that is the common theme through every single one of the 100 plus reports. About half of those reports describe a creature of absolutely enormous size. So we are talking about 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder.
Oh.
All right. So that is stunning, right?
Yeah.
So of course we have bear and wolf and cougar that live in the area. And cougar, they only get to be, the big ones are 24 inches tall at the shoulder. To be 4 feet tall at the shoulder, or even in excess of that, we're talking about a different species. In fact, that is larger than a tiger, which is the largest known scientifically accepted cat on the planet. And the research that I did on this, there is one animal in the fossil record. It's scientific name is the Panthera atrox. This is a North American lion that ranged all over North America during the Ice Age. It's said to have gone extinct 10,000 years ago. I got a replica skull. So there have been, it's a very well documented species. And so we have a replica skull of this in the store. And we have it next to a cougar skull. And the size comparison is unbelievable. It's like 4 to 5 times larger than a cougar skull. And what they believe that when this creature was alive, that it weighed in excess of 1,100 pounds. And it was 4 to 5 feet tall at the shoulder and 8 feet from snout to rump. So that is the size that some reports include. And so to be sure, only about 50% of the reports specifically mention this enormous size of the creature. Interestingly, the Panthera atrox, the North American lion, it was sexually dimorphic, which means that the males were larger than the females. And so you would expect in that type of population to have 50% of the reports be, smaller and 50% be larger. Yeah. Again, I'm just, I am mystified. I don't have answers about what this creature is. But this Panthera atrox is an interesting avenue to pursue. It may be that there's some pocket in this vast, rugged wilderness where these creatures survived, or it may be something else.
Well, that's a really cool theory, just even in the scope of cryptids, just because there's so many, beliefs about Bigfoot being, descended from giant apes that wandered around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or even like Nessie being a plesiosaur
Exactly.
of some sort. So it's always kind of a cool theory on a lot of these cryptids that, quite honestly, I mean, it's not super laughable either.
No.
Yeah. Well, what amazes me is that these creatures lived alongside humans. Like, there were people living here 10,000 years ago, and they were dealing with the Panthera atrox. And so, it's there, and there was nothing that dramatically different about the Earth's environment and atmosphere. So these creatures are absolutely available in the genetic record, and they absolutely could live in our world. Like, there's no scientific reason why they couldn't exist. Same thing is true of the Gigantopithecus, which also lived alongside humans. They believe that one was probably 200,000 years. They're dating on that one. And then there's the name, the ape cat, and that comes from a small handful of reports. And this is the part that puzzles me probably more than anything. Yeah. About 10% of our reports describe a creature that looks like a cat. It's got the tail and the feline body, but its face looks similar to that of a monkey, a cross between a monkey and a cat. And
it's gross.
Yeah, it just sounds, it sounds like one of those medieval paintings of animals where they just kind of heard these descriptions and then just painted something, and
Here's a cat, kind of. I don't know.
Yeah, like the cat's not quite
exactly.
Right.
Well, that one, like I said, it the very first report I got about the creature had that description in it, and that's why it got the name the ape cat. And so there was a gentleman who was orienteering about 3 miles west of the store, an area called Buck Creek, and orienteering, you're using map and compass, you're navigating through the forest.
Okay, thank you for answering that, because I had no idea.
And his compass started acting strange. We don't know if that's associated with this sighting or not. The government issued navigational maps of the area have bright pink letters on them that warn that your compass readings will be off in the gorge. It's just part of the electromagnetic environment that's here. And he said he got a strange feeling. He looked up across the creek, and there was this giant black cat, 4 feet tall to shoulder. In his description, it had long fur, big, long black tail, and it was just looking at him. And he had about a 5-minute encounter with this thing. Now, this guy, when he came into the store, it took him about 45 minutes to work up the courage to tell me his story. And
I like the idea of just like, I could use a glove, maybe.
It's me when I talk to anyone ever. Like, oh, look at this hat.
I
Yeah.
like notebooks. Hey, you
And
guys ever see a cat before? I saw a weird one, I think.
well, one of the things that made his story believable to me was that he was actually a friend of my mother-in-law. And my mother-in-law was a very accomplished pharmacist. And she actually helped his mother with some medical issues she was having by making some recommendations and things like that. And so kind of a friend of the family, right? And someone who wasn't coming in and, with their chest stuck out and I've got a great tale to tell you. It was like kind of figuring out if I was a decent person or not before he was willing to tell the story. And so he described this creature. And at the end of it, he said, and James, the strangest thing is that it had a face that looked like a cross between a cat and a monkey. And I had to shake my head and, tried to get more information out of him. And it had intelligent ape-like eyes and some other primate features. There's a few bits of his description that I never announced publicly so that I have some way to verify other stories. So, you gave sort of some of my bio. I have thousands of hours of wilderness experience, and I have encountered
And
just
James,
about.
I want to hear about every single one right after this break.
The Oregon Bigfoot Festival and Beyond is back and bigger than ever at Oaks Amusement Park, Saturday, June 29th. Meet Bigfoot hunters like Ronnie LeBlanc of Discovery Channel's Expedition Bigfoot and Paranormal Caught on Camera, and paranormal investigators like me, Dave Schrader of the Holzer Files and the Paranormal 60 podcast. Join us for a day of family fun celebrating Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs, and everything beyond. You never know what you'll find. Don't miss the Oregon Bigfoot Festival and Beyond, Saturday, June 29th at Oaks Amusement Park. Get tickets today at OregonBigfootFest.com. OregonBigfootFest.com.
The Oregon Bigfoot Festival. Oregon Bigfoot Festival.
Okay, first of all, that amount of training in the wilderness is, oh my goodness. This is just all the things that I want. Tell me more.
So what I was going to say was that, so his story raised some flags for me. So first of all, of course, we have cougar out here, but there's no wildlife biologist that will acknowledge black cougars. Cougars are supposed to be like a tawny tannish color. When they get dark, they go to red. Black is not a scientifically recognized color for cougar. Number two, 4 feet tall to shoulder. Not a thing for cougars. Number three, it's unafraid of humans. And we've had many reports that have the same theme that go through it, where these creatures are completely unfazed by the presence of humans. Now, a normal cougar will abandon a fresh kill just at the sound of human voices. And they've done studies on this. And of course, this notion of this monkey-like face. And again, like that's one of the reports that, I'll get a report and I'll be like, okay, monkey-like face. And then I'll maybe it's a reporting error or maybe the light was weird. And then someone else highly credible will come in and describe that feature as well. A woman who was a fire crew chief working between Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams said one deployment, it was a 3-day deployment. On the first day, they saw the creature, black cat with a monkey-like face, and they were all wondering what in the hell they were going to do if it showed up in their camp. Now, a wildland forest firefighter is amongst the most competent wilderness professionals you're going to find. I mean, you're in the wilderness, which is a dangerous job, and then everything's on fire. So you have to know your stuff. And having done that kind of work myself, there's a communication, a no bullshitting around kind of a thing. And when this woman told me about this experience that her whole crew, I was like, well, I can't discount this as not a feature, right? Now, her description was a little more interesting. She said that its face looked flattened. So think about the difference between like a Doberman Pinscher and a pug dog. Right. Both are dogs. One has a skeletal structure that makes its face look flatter, maybe more human-like, maybe more ape-like. Don't know, right? But for me, it remains part of the huge mystery of it. But even if we are just talking about a cougar with dark dark color fur. That's national news, right? Like forget about monkeys and forget about 5 feet tall and forget about supernatural compass weirding out and everything else. Just a black cougar is something that is currently unrecognized by science. So I'm fascinated by this. In fact, this summer I am planning on announcing a monetary reward for someone who can bring me in clear, undeniable video footage of the creature that's been described. And the reason why I'm so confident, people have told me that I've seen like blob squatchy kind of footage of it at a distance, black creature moving through tall grass. You really can't make out any great features. Other people have told me that they've seen it on their property, people in their orchards. I've had the most senior law enforcement officials in some of the communities here tell me that they've seen it. And so I'm certain that someone will capture footage if they don't already have it.
Well, listen, I'm gonna say that Tressa and I will give it a shot as soon as I can convince her to go into the woods
With you.
with me. So we will be sending a submission at some point in time, I'm sure. I'm absolutely
right.
positive. Absolutely positive about it. Where do we think this thing comes from?
Well, that's a great question. And I have been scratching my head on this thing for a couple of years now. And a few years back, I found an article that talked about the Hanford Nuclear Reservation north of here and the animal testing program that they had. So back during World War II, everyone knows about the Manhattan Project. And so you had the Allies terrified that the Nazis are going to unlock the secrets of the atom before the Allies do. So they spin up the Manhattan Project. Everyone knows that Oppenheimer is down in Los Alamos with a team of engineers designing the bomb. But they need to find a place where they can create the plutonium, right? Where they can forge plutonium. They need a nuclear reactor. So the government basically grabs a 600 square mile area of land along the Columbia River, just upriver from where we are. And it's in the desert, right? And they evict everyone who lives there. So there's a couple of towns out there. The Native Americans have been using that as a sacred hunting ground for thousands and thousands of years. They get kicked off. And they loved this site because it's got basically 45 miles of the Columbia River flows through it. And there's a big hydroelectric dam up there. So it gave them power and it gave them cooling water and it gave them a super remote area that was over 300 miles away from the coast so that they'd be sort of protected from enemy bombers. And they build the world's first industrial scale nuclear reactor there, right? And so they are literally creating elements that have never existed in nature before. Like it's not something you find naturally. And so from day one, like I said, I learned about this animal testing program because Hanford closed down in the 80s, but they had, they're right now doing this giant cleanup and they found a boxcar full of radioactive animal carcasses. Oh. And I was like, what the hell is this, right? And so I'm digging deeper and digging deeper, doing research. I go out and visit the site and I learn that from day one, they had this animal testing program. So everyone is obviously concerned about the bomb during World War II, but the Nazis have got this whole program of creating super animals. And in fact, they brought back an extinct ice age creature called the aurochs. It's this gigantic hyper-aggressive bull creature. And they populated a forest in Poland with these things. And they were going to be like these supreme Nazi hunters. But they're creating, super animals and they want to have super soldier programs. Mm-hmm. In the 1940s, we knew that radiation could induce mutations, but we didn't know much more than that, right? And so they pull a scientist from the University of Washington near Seattle. His name is Dr. Lauren Donaldson. And his only academic achievement before getting assigned to Hanford was that he had actually created a super animal. It's called the Donaldson super trout, and it is a fish that is 8 times larger and stronger than a normal fish.
I thought I was going to get away with not laughing at the name until Tressa did. Just the super trout.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yes. No. I mean, it's crazy. I mean,
yeah.
And so this creature is still alive today. They populate fisheries with it. but it reaches sexual maturity in half the time. It's super survivable. It can swim in salt water and fresh water. It's got this whole range of incredible abilities. He's the guy that they tap to start their animal testing program in Hanford on day one, right? So it's this long history of this whole thing. Well, we build the bombs. The first bomb ever exploded was the Trinity test, and that plutonium came from Hanford. And then there was Hiroshima, and that plutonium came from a different site, which they never used again. And then the Nagasaki bomb had Hanford plutonium in it. And then the Cold War. So we won the war. They announced Hanford was a thing. They thought it didn't matter. And then the Russians start scooping up Nazi scientists. So the United States panics. They create Operation Paperclip, and they start scooping up Nazi scientists, right? And so Hanford closes back down, becomes our most important Cold War site. Eventually, there are 9 nuclear reactors out there. The animal testing program grows to be able to house 1,000 large animals at a time. And are 4 Nike missile launch sites. These are surface-to-air missiles that are nuclear tipped. The idea was, and no other site in America had 4 surface-to-air Nike missile launch sites.
Your mic's getting a little weird again.
Sorry about that. Is this a
we're
little
back.
bit better?
You're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
So the idea behind these Nike missiles is that it would be better to detonate a nuclear weapon over civilian populations and take out Soviet bombers rather than let those bombers hit Hanford. Like, that's the level of crazy that they're talking about out there, right?
Yeah.
So I'm doing this research and I'm trying to figure out, is there any way that this could have happened? Like, and my first thought was maybe that, like some cougars in the area got mixed up with the radiation that's leaking out there. In fact, there's a guy whose job it is to study radioactive bunny poop, because the bunnies hang out by the barrels of radioactive material. They get radioactively hot. They hop around the range. And the thing is, those rabbits are prey food for wolves and cougars and all these other types of things. And you look at Chernobyl, and in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, the wolves out there are thriving and they're super healthy. There was an initial set of like unsustainable mutations, but now those creatures are incredibly healthy and they're thriving. And so my first thought was, maybe there's something like that happened where some cougars, have been exposed to low levels of radiation. And in fact, Dr. Lauren Donaldson, actually during a debate during the 1970s that was publicized in the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, said, yeah, when animals are exposed to low levels of radiation, they actually get stronger. They don't, become weirded out and unsustainable. Well,
So wait a minute. Does this mean that there are like super strong bunnies out there too?
what's strange
Because I
is
really
that
would like to see that.
I myself have witnessed black wild rabbits. Now, that's not an
Whoa.
impossibility, but they exist.
That's
And I've also
wild.
witnessed black bobcats. Now, what's wild about black bobcats is that they are scientifically recognized. But in the history of the United States, there are only 20 documented sightings. And we've had people come into the store and report black bobcats. We've also I myself have witnessed them with my own eyes. And then I've also witnessed these black rabbits hopping around in some of the forested areas.
That
And
are
so
great at fighting.
yeah, they're super awesome. So, I eventually found some interviews. So there was an oral history project of the people the guy who ran this program. So Lauren Donaldson eventually left Hanford. He went down to the South Pacific, and he was part of like the Bikini Atoll test and the disastrous Castle Bravo test, which gave rise to the whole Godzilla mythology. And but he stays in contact with the new guy in charge, whose name is Bill Bear. And I listened to hours and hours of Bill Bear talking about his experiences with the animal testing lab. And so on the one hand, what they're doing makes a lot of sense. Like, if cows go through fallout, can you drink their milk? Can you eat their meat? Can you get the wool from a sheep and make clothing out of it and still be okay? Like, there's a lot of questions that they had during the Cold War, because remember, nuclear weapons didn't exist. No one knew what would happen. And most of what we know about the effects of radiation on the human body and biological creatures comes from the research at Hanford. But at the end of these interviews, in 3 different interviews, he talks about how they were irradiating apex predators, and those apex predators escaped.
Oh,
And
I was
that's
going to
fine.
say it usually doesn't end well when you start doing things. If movies have shown
Yeah.
me anything,
Listen,
exactly.
listen.
So
if the 1950s sci-fi B movies have taught me nothing, it's that we should have giant animals everywhere over there.
Yeah,
Totally
it's like
makes sense,
bats
right?
and spiders. Yeah.
Yes.
well,
Especially
it's funny you
those-
should mention that. There's this whole incident of this horde of radioactive ants that were plaguing parts of Hanford. I've had wildlife biologists tell me they found rattlesnakes with 3 eyeballs. I mean, like, there's a whole set
They
of
don't
like,
need that many eyeballs.
no kidding, right? So lots of weird stuff. But so Bill Bear tells a story of how there's an episode where they had 30 to 40 alligators, and they were irradiating the alligators. He even holds up a picture of the device they used to irradiate the alligators with alligators in it, right? So it's like, no question about it, this is what they're doing. Well, one night, 6 of these irradiated experimental apex predators outsmart the scientists,
Because of course they do.
and they escape into the Columbia River. Now,
Scamps.
there's one of these gators had escaped before, and so they had reinforced the pens, but this group of 6 basically defeated the enhanced security. The problem
They
with that
stood
first,
on each other's shoulders, didn't they?
something like that. You can only imagine, they got slide rules and they're figuring it out. Well, so that one that escaped earlier was captured by a fisherman, and he was so proud of it that he stuffed it and put it into a sporting goods store. Well, the thing is still radioactively hot, so they had to send in
That'll
a
teach you,
hot
smarty.
team and basically confiscate this radioactive stuffed alligator. And so you've got these now 6 alligators swimming around, and they're panicked because there's like no hiding this. So they put out a press release that's sort of watered down that says there's some animals that escaped into the Columbia River. And
It's fine. Just let us know. It's fine. It's fine.
Don't worry, they're giant and smart and
irradiated.
tough and
Nothing to worry
irradiated.
about.
BT
Yeah.
dubs.
So anyway, they have this special army hunting team, and it goes out every day for 6 months trying to hunt down these alligators.
6 months.
And they only capture 4 of them.
Oh no.
That
And they're
is,
like-
that is too many that are loose.
Yeah. And they say, well, it's probably going to get too cold. They won't ever survive the winter. We can call off the hunt. And so, like,
They're filled with radiation.
They are
and they're
heat.
swimming around in the hot water that's coming out of the nuclear reactors, right? Because like that water basically goes through the reactors and
yeah.
cools the reactors and comes out like at over 100 degrees and flows directly into the Columbia River. And so these creatures are swimming around out there, and they're pretty sure that the alligators couldn't survive the winter. So no need to continue hunting them, right?
I mean,
Fine.
did they
I'm sure
know
they're not
about the
reproducing.
whole like being able to like slow down like their heartbeat?
Yeah,
and
I've
sort
seen
of
video
go
of
into,
alligators like in ice with their nostrils sticking out of the ice.
Yeah.
and,
they
like,
can do
making
that just anyway.
So and Bill Bear is like perfectly open about this whole thing, and he's talking about it. He said, "Yeah, like back in even into the '80s, I was getting calls from fish and wildlife guys asking me if I knew anything about alligators in the Columbia, and I just told them no and hung up." And then he laughs about it in these videos, like, "Holy crap, are you shitting me?" And so you got to ask yourself, what in the hell are they doing? Like, you can understand why they might be irradiating cows or chickens or sheep, but alligators, like, we don't eat alligator meat on the regular. Like, we don't, like, alligators aren't a part of our food supply. They're not a part of our any kind of
But-
significant clothing supply,
They'll make very cool super soldiers, though.
right?
Yeah, they will.
Well, so did some more digging, and turns out that since 1958, the U.S. government has used dolphins to guard our most sensitive nuclear sites.
I love this fact so
I
much.
know it's great.
All right, so here's the problem. Many of our nuclear sites, especially our nuclear subsites, and most nuclear reactors have to be on a waterfront. The biggest danger is Soviet scuba divers. particularly Soviet scuba divers at night. If they're coming in with night vision, they can surveil, they can sabotage, they can cause all kinds of trouble. Now, back in the 50s, radar, sonar, they can't tell the difference between a Soviet scuba diver and a tuna fish or sea lion or any kind of marine animal. But you can train a dolphin to tell the difference, right? And so what they would do is, my understanding is they would rig this special kind of harpoon-like spike on the snout of the dolphins. And they would train the dolphins, once they identified an enemy diver in the water, to swim at high speed and ram that barbed spike into the diver's flesh. A balloon would inflate and it'd bring that diver suddenly to the surface. And then the government security forces would come in and scoop that guy up and gather intelligence. A dead diver at the bottom of the ocean or the bottom of the river is not going to give you any useful information. You want to be able to, capture him and figure out what kind of gear he's wearing and if he has any intel on him. So we know it's an absolute undisputed fact. Like in the 80s, a quarter of the U.S. nuclear stockpile was guarded by dolphins. Like that is the zealous Cold Warriors figuring out the best way to guard our most important nuclear sites. And like I said before, Hanford is at the top of the list. There's no site in America more important than Hanford. They forged enough plutonium at Hanford to create 60,000 nuclear weapons. Its nickname was the Apocalypse Factory. Like it is like 100% our most sensitive and secure site. And 45 miles of river means you've got 90 miles of river coastline to guard. And how in the hell do you do that? Like that is a
Gators.
Really... So yeah, you're gonna look at the success of the dolphin program. Now, you can't bring dolphins into the Columbia because dolphins are saltwater creatures. Columbia is freshwater. And so what do? You start looking for what animals could we also create as sentry creatures. And so you might try alligators, but you would also ask yourself one very simple question. What is the world's most effective riverine hunter? Which animal can hunt the best in a river environment? Turns out it's a jaguar. And so, of course, jaguars can be black. Jaguars can hold their breath for 15 minutes. They can swim a kilometer in the open ocean. They can eat underwater. Pound for pound, they're the strongest of the big cats. They have night vision that is 6 times better than a human being. And as a bonus, they always instinctively drag their prey to shore. And so if you wanted to write a list of what animal would we want to modify and train and have become a sentry creature, black jaguar is at the top of your list, right?
Counterpoint. Have you ever tried to train a cat?
Okay. Counterpoint to your counterpoint. You don't have to believe they were successful. You just have to believe they tried. And the reason why I say that is the CIA had a program called Operation Headgear. And in this program, they attached these electrodes to sharks and stuffed these living sharks with explosives. And the idea
I don't like
was
this. I don't like
they
this
were
at
gonna
all.
remotely control sharks to swim towards enemy vessels and then detonate these living sharks. And they spent 9 years and $14 million figuring out that it was a terrible idea.
It is a terrible idea. Sharks are great, and you should never explode them.
Exactly. But it shows you the mentality of Cold Warriors and how
I have no doubt that
absolutely.
they tried to train anything. They had alligators. They weren't
Yeah.
thinking the long game. They were thinking a scary animal. We'll do
yeah,
that.
what can we do? And can we train an animal like a big cat to be a sentry creature, right? And they might try genetically modifying it, just like Donaldson was doing way back at the beginning of the whole program. And
With
if
the fish.
right now you can look at like in a place, I think it's called Bear Creek up in Canada, there's like one of these sort of like privately owned big cat sanctuaries. And there was a lion and a jaguar living in a pen together. And apparently they loved each other very much. And they had 2 babies. And one of them is this gigantic black lion-sized, is a black lion, basically. And it is enormous. And so it is 100% possible for them to be interbreeding. And lions are amongst the most trainable of the big cats. Jaguars are amongst the worst. And so you can imagine they might be trying all kinds of different things. Well, what we think happened is that they had some type of jaguar sentinel program that they were running at Hanford. Just like the gators, those creatures outsmarted the scientists. And once they escaped into the
I'm
wilderness,
starting to think those scientists aren't so smart.
they couldn't recapture them.
The jaguars just threw something in the other room.
What's
And
that?
this, what?
Did you hear that?
We better go check it out.
Yeah.
Should I close this pen? They'll be
That's
fine.
fine.
So if you look at the location of Hanford, if you go north, south, or east of Hanford, you just go deeper into the desert. If you head west towards Klickitat County, where my stores are and where most of these reports are being filed from, there's this abundance of food sources and habitat and everything that a big cat needs to be happy. And so we think what happened was, like I said, our reports go back to 1968. That's the first sighting we have of the creature, reported sighting. And we think that these creatures have taken up residence here in the Columbia River Gorge, and they are happily thriving population now. What's interesting to me is this detail that they are unafraid of humans. And so if you were training cats, they wouldn't be automatically hostile to humans, right? You'd want them to not automatically kill their trainers. You would breed them in such a way that they were habituated to humans and unafraid of humans. But when you gave them the proper command or whatever it is that you did, that it is only then that they turned into killing machines. And so anyway, that, as wild as it sounds, is the most rational explanation for why we've got gigantic Black Panther-like creatures creeping around the Columbia River Gorge.
It's an incredibly fascinating story, just filled with little nuggets of things that I had no idea about and some things I knew. And then just, I gotta admit, some of the hilarity of some of these things. First of all,
Come on,
it's
you
about
guys.
time that we armed some of these marine, animals, because,
Jeni,
come on.
I want to hear all about your plan for that right after this break.
Are you troubled by strange noises in the middle of the night? Do you experience feelings of dread in your basement or attic? Have you or your family ever seen a spook, spectre, or ghost? Then Haunted Magazine issue 41 might just be for you. In issue 41 we have The Enfield Haunting, an interview with Dave Schrader, Danny Robbins, and lots more. Out now in stores, app stores, and online at bit.ly/Haunted Magazine. Remember, don't be normal, be paranormal.
So anyway, let's get some sharks, some lasers.
That's
Sharks with freaking lasers.
It's really just what it boils down to. How awesome is that story about the dolphins, though?
that's so great.
Yeah.
But what I love about it is that, like, it kind of shows like the insanity that was going on during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, for sure.
the lengths, and Bill Bear was a World War II veteran, and he was, in his mind, dedicated to protecting America, and he felt like that his work and the things that they were doing there was really about keeping the Soviet threat away and protecting the world from annihilation, like nuclear annihilation. And so I was a soldier during the Cold War, and so I'm a bit of a Cold War relic myself. And it's fascinating to see like how these things have sort of evolved and these things that were going on when I was serving in the military.
Yeah, I bet.
But yeah, so like that is one explanation. And again, like I'm trying to develop more proof. I think I'm not sure that we would ever really know that story. The amount of secrecy and the way the Department of Energy keeps their secrets is even more secure than the military. And they're highly compartmentalized. In fact, there are some parts of nuclear weapons that the United States have forgotten how to make because the people either died or retired. And so like there are secrets that we may never know, but we do know for sure that at Hanford, they were intentionally experimenting on the local populations without their consent or knowledge.
Oh,
And
that's
yeah,
That's unsurprising, actually.
and
that is-
So, there's there's that scientific mode of, this could be this biological experiment that occurred. But we also have petroglyphs in the area that seem to indicate that there was strange cat-like creatures that the Native Americans have been encountering for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And there is a tradition in the Native American community, and this story and the name comes from the Great Lakes area, but there is a race of underwater panther protectors. When the Native Americans talk about things coming from the underwater realm or the sky realm or the earth realm, they're talking about creatures that have 1 foot in the physical world that we live in every day and 1 foot in the spiritual world. Mm-hmm. And what I found fascinating about these creatures they call Meshepeshu is that the description of them is that they look like a black panther with the face of a man. And again, hard to say if we're talking about the same thing. But like I said, there are petroglyphs in the desert areas of the gorge, which are, for all intent and purposes, looks like, strange cat-like creatures with crazy eyes. There's one area, there's a desert mesa. It's called Horse Thief Butte. And from the road, it looks like a classic flat top, steep-walled kind of a thing. But you get up into it, and it is riddled with a labyrinth of hidden passageways and natural amphitheaters. There are petroglyphs on the walls. There are places where the Native Americans would build these sort of circular rock structures. They would go in to have vision quests to find their spirit animals. And you can climb up on top of this thing, and you look down, and there is this thing called Horse Thief Lake right below it. And then right across Horse Thief Lake is where a number of these petroglyphs could be found, specifically the one that looks like this cat. And a few years ago, before we had initiated our paranormal reporting program, I was hanging out up there at sunset, and I looked down into the lake, and I could see a creature swimming around in the water.
Oh.
And this creature, there was some waterfowl on the surface of the lake, so I could kind of get an estimation of the size, but it was easily 700 meters away. Very difficult for me to make out what it was without binoculars. The creature that I saw was dark in color. It seemed to be swimming in a patrol sort of in the middle of the lake. It wasn't swimming across the lake. It was sort of circling in the center. It was clearly bigger than a human being, but smaller than a car, so somewhere in that size range. And it would submerge for up to 5 minutes and then come back up to the surface. And I was looking at, what in the hell am I looking at? Of course, I didn't have any context of any cat, so it wasn't even on the menu for me. But I went through all the big creatures that live out here, and it certainly was bigger than a cougar, so I knew it wasn't that. Bears are point-to-point swimmers, and so they're not going to spend time circling the middle of the lake. They're not going to submerge. Elk, another creature that might be big enough, but they're point-to-point swimmers, certainly not submerging, certainly not patrolling the center.
Oh, your mic's
What
out
about-
again.
Sorry, can you hear me? Is that better?
Yeah. Mhm.
It sounded like something is getting unplugged. You're fine. Go ahead.
What about hunting? Like, if it would a bear be like looking for fish or something along those lines, where it would circle and dive like that?
No, the bear out here are black bear, and black bear are smaller than me. I'm 6'5", and so this creature was bigger than me for sure.
Okay.
And so I don't think it was a bear. And bears are typically going to fish in the shallows of rivers where they can stand, and they're not going to be, typically they don't swim. So to this point, to me, that's unconfirmed. I don't know what I saw, but I do know that it doesn't match the description of any of the creatures that currently live in the area. And so that was one of those, and interesting to me that it was literally like there's me, there's the creature, and then there's the petroglyph of this creature. Maybe a coincidence, impossible to say. Also down here in the gorge, we have this decades-long tradition of UFO sightings. In fact, the first UFO sighting in America, the Kenneth Arnold sighting in June of 1947, occurred in Washington State. He saw 9 UFOs. He was a private pilot flying across the Cascade Mountains. 9 saucer-shaped craft, seemingly at speeds and maneuvering in ways that were beyond any technological capability. And they flew past Mount Rainier towards Mount Adams, right? And so that's Mount Adams is in our backyard. It's 35 miles away. It's a probably 12,000 foot mountain. And And so, but around Mount Adams, there are UFO sightings all the time. Like there's a place called Isetti Ranch out there at the sort of the foothills of Mount Adams. Isetti stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And people come from all over the world. They go to Jim Gilliland's ranch, and you can camp out there, and they watch UFOs fly around Mount Adams all night long. And you can go to the site eSETI.org, see some of the video footage. What most people see are glowing orbs that will separate in midair. They'll do things that no aircraft can do, and they'll combine. Even some folks claim to have seen, and we've had reports like this, that they're in the store of a physical hangar door that opens up towards one of the second summits of the mountain.
Oh, that's how they can kick them out and tuck and roll, Jeni. Tuck and roll.
Tuck and roll.
I climbed Mount Adams when I was 30 years old several times. And from the top of Mount Adams, you can see Hanford. And so, there are numerous UFO sightings in the Hanford area. And there's this belief that whatever UFOs are, they have an intense interest in our nuclear capabilities. And that's sort of when they showed up. And so, but there's also lots of stories of strange government activity in the area. We have hikers that come into the store and tell us that they were stopped from going into an area that's normally public access by soldiers with rifles, telling them that they needed to leave. And so we've had several reports like that in the area. So the whole area is just profoundly, it is one of the most active paranormal hotspots in the country. But the thing I wanted to tell you about Isetti Ranch, and so they believe that they're in contact with a number of different extraterrestrial intelligent races. Now, it's unclear to me whether they believe they're coming from outer space or from interdimensions or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But when you look at their logo, it's it's got a cat face, like a giant lion face, and they say that they are in contact with a race of feline humanoids, and so whether that's related to these reports of this cat, I don't know. We have many folks that like their encounter with the ape cat is pretty mundane. Like they're kind of boring stories. I was driving my ATV and this giant black cat
just waving.
No, okay. Like we've had people in their orchard say that they see the cat just sitting in their orchard. Yeah. But like I was driving my ATV and this giant black cat jumped across the trail and scared the crap out of me, and I never saw it again. Like that's a really common story for us to get.
Yeah, they can't be on all the time. You gotta let them relax every once in a while.
Yeah.
Apples are great. I would sit in an orchard if I were a giant defender cat.
Yeah, sure.
One guy who was visiting Mount St. Helens said he was driving back from, there's like a Summit Visitor Center, and this gigantic black cat jumped into the middle of the road. He looked at it. It was as tall as his Honda Civic. So it's a 4.5 foot tall vehicle. And then it jumped over the guardrail and down a hillside. And so another woman who was camping in the Oregon side of the river, she was camping with her family. She got out in the middle of the night to go pee. She saw this enormous black cat standing on a log that was fallen down. And then it hopped off the log and started approaching her, and she like pinched it off and jumped back in the tent real quick. She showed me a picture of her family, 5 of her family members standing on that log. And she said, James, the creature was standing sideways, and it was as long as all 5 of these people standing next to each other. So the thing is that it's, I mean, I can tell you all these stories and you can think I'm, making it up or fabulous or whatever.
These are fascinating.
But that to me is why it's so important. I know that people have video footage of it. And part of my mission is that when ordinary people have extraordinary experiences, there's often nowhere they can turn. One of my employees saw the creature when she was driving to work one morning at dawn, and she was driving through Klickitat Canyon, and she saw this enormous black cat. And she stopped her car to watch it. She told her family about it, and they, of course, laughed nervously. And they told her that she had probably seen a cow, and that was what she had mistaken it for. Now, you're grown women. You could probably tell the difference between a cow and a cat, right?
Yeah.
And people
I would
have,
hope so.
and you can't blame her family. Like everyone wants to normalize these things. No one life is hard
Absolutely.
enough.
Yeah.
You don't need a giant black cat complicating, your life.
As they
But
often do, yeah.
but what happens to these ordinary people having extraordinary experiences is they have nowhere to go. They hold these stories within them, and it is really, I think, probably the most surprising and gratifying parts of this whole reporting experience for me is the connections that I make with these people who for decades have been laughed at or told that they were crazy or told that they were on drugs or whatever. And then to have someone believe them, it is a great emotional relief. And to me, that's the important part of the work. And if, my businesses are successful and for me to be able to put up some real money to help validate the experiences of these people, I think is really important. And I think it is one of those things that would be a really good case study about why you don't laugh at people when they have an unusual story, why you entertain the notion that they may have experienced something that science has not yet come to understand. And if you think about it, science is always the last to know. Like the way the scientific method works is you're going to get field reports and then somebody has to go out and verify it. And then all of the established dogmas and, paradigms need to be rejiggered. And then the real hard asses need to die off so that they're no longer saying, no, this can't be possible. And so science is always, it's a trailing indicator of truth. It's not a leading indicator of truth.
Yeah.
And like even gorillas, there are reports of gorillas from 500 BC. And it wasn't until 1901 when one was shot that science finally decided to recognize them as real. That is a span of 2,400 years of field reports and science refusing to acknowledge the existence, right? And so being self-funded and being not worrying about an academic reputation, I can go forth, do interviews like this, be completely unafraid of, consequences to my career or my funding, and hopefully help some people out who have had, like I said, ordinary people having extraordinary experiences.
We love that, and so many of our guests, are very, very open about just report stuff to us, and we here at Monsters Lounge certainly believe in getting support for people who have been through extraordinary things. How can people reach you? How can they find you to get these reports to you?
Well, of course, there's margiesoutdoorstore.com and the website. You can file paranormal reports at our website. We typically only focus our attention on paranormal reports from the Gorge area. That's, it could be vast. And so that's our sandbox that we play in. We have a Facebook page, so Margie's Outdoor Store on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel. And I'll be honest with you guys, I suck at social media. I'm great at it for like 2 weeks. And then I get bored.
Hey,
and,
same.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
and I'm off investigating real stuff and I forget to tell people what we're doing. So anyway, we try to keep up on that. And so those are a couple of things. But most of all, we'd love for you to come visit and come to the Gorge. We're right across the river from Hood River, Oregon. So it's a very popular vacation spot. In fact, it's the windsurfing capital of the world. And so we're in Bingen, Washington. And that's about 60 miles east of Portland, Oregon. So people fly into Portland. And the Gorge is, I promise you, even if you don't see a Bigfoot, a UFO, or a Klickitat Ape Cat, you will have a magical experience here because it is honestly one of the most beautiful places in the world.
Tressa, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
I think I might be thinking what you're
You
thinking.
might be thinking it. We just happen to be going to Portland, Oregon fairly soon.
Very
Well,
So
soon.
perhaps we
You
shall
guys know my
visit.
number, so give me a call and I'd be happy to give you a tour of the area.
A little bit of a detour.
We would love it. James, if you could hang out for just a second after the show, we would really appreciate it. But I think that's about all the time that we have. Tressa?
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like we didn't get half of a third of.
Oh, we're gonna have him back.
You guys,
Oh, we're going to have him back. No,
We gotta
we
go
still
back.
have to talk about rocks Like this is, we'll have him back.
Silly say
There's no
rocks?
question here. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to be back.
Yay.
Everybody else, we'll see you next week. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and the Paranormal 60 Network. Like, comment, subscribe, and check out our merch on our website, monstersloungepodcast.com. Send us an email or comment. We love hearing from people. So until next time, thanks for visiting the Monsters Lounge.
Good night.